Good afternoon. My name's Nathan Stelter. I'm the president here at the Stelter Company, and thank you, as always, for joining us on our webinar today. You're in for a great treat. Case Studies in Planned Giving, presented by the Pamela Jones Davidson. And I'll get to an introduction of Pamela in just a hot minute, but first want to say a couple words about the webinar series. As many of you are familiar, as an expert advocate for asset-based giving, Stelter is committed to providing innovative solutions and education for the nonprofit industry. We pride ourselves on being a bridge builder for the community and are happy to host this free webinar today, connecting you with amazing experts like Pamela from across the country to assist in maximizing revenue across your development portfolio. Today is actually our 8th and final webinar of 2024. If you missed any of our previous webinars, we have all the recordings and handouts and slides available on our website, which is just simply www.stelter.com/webinars. And a unique ask for everybody today, as this is our last webinar of the year, we are in planning mode for next year. And we always want to hear from you, whether it's a topic or a particular speaker. Please do, at the end of this survey, let us know who, or even through the chat, as Jen mentioned, let us know of any speakers, any topics that you're interested in as we're putting together our lineup for next year. We're always happy to find the right speakers and bring them to you as best we can. So now back to today's webinar. As I mentioned, we have the pleasure once again introducing Pamela Jones Davidson. Pamela is a regular on the circuit and a longtime friend, and has done a variety of webinars for Stelter. For those that don't know Pamela, you're about to get introduced. She is the president of Davidson Gift Design in lovely Bloomington, Indiana, a consulting firm specializing in all aspects of gift planning and training. She's also a senior vice president for the great firm of Thompson Associates, offering estate planning services to nonprofits around the country. She was with Indiana University Foundation for over 11 years, where she served as executive director of Planned Giving and associate counsel. She also earned her BA from Indiana University and graduated magna cum laude from the Indiana University School of Law in Indianapolis. She's been an examiner in the state and gift tax division of the IRS and practiced law in Indianapolis. Pamela has a long and storied career as past president and chair of our own National Association of Charitable Gift Planners, and on its board for 6 years, and serves on the board of several other charities within her community. Again, you're in for a treat today, and excited to hand over the reins for the next hour to Pamela. It's all yours.
Oh, Nathan, thank you so much. And greetings from a very sunny Bloomington, Indiana, which honestly is in a state of Koyaanisqatsi. If you know that piece of music by Philip Glass, it's ranked number 5 in football, IU. Can that even be? Playing Ohio State at Ohio State on Saturday. Hold on to your hats. So very surprising. But I have to congratulate all of you for taking on your own learning right now. I will tell you, you have to constantly learn, hone your skills. The world has changed so much in charitable gift planning. You know, you've heard me say this before. When I started, it was all about learning the vehicles. Well, what's a charitable gift annuity? What's a trust? Vehicles are fine, but I learned long ago that the vehicles are the caboose of the train. The donor intent and the donor needs are the locomotives. So what this presentation is about is a number of case studies that do just what we learned in law school, application. Law school was all about the concept that a client would come in and say, I'm so annoyed by my neighbor. His dog's running wild, ripping up my garden, tearing down my fence. No one says this is a case of XYZ type of law. So it was all about applying what someone told you in facts to what you could possibly suggest in terms of a charitable gift plan. And let me also say this before we delve in, and Jen, we're about ready to advance to the next one. She's going to advance them because that way I can't run afoul. But you will, the best thing you can do when you sit down with a donor or prospect is to have more than one idea. There's never just one. And let me tell you, as an ethical attorney who embraces the model standards of practice for the charitable gift planner, there's an upside and a downside. And if it's an irrevocable plan, all the more so. So what do? Work it out together, discuss, dialogue, fill in the details. Okay, Jen, go ahead and let's look at the first one. Okay, this first case study, and I'd forgotten all about this. I had forgotten all about this. This happened the year very early in my career. I went up to Kokomo, Indiana, auto supply capital of the country. I went to Kokomo, Indiana for the Community Foundation. I was sitting there in the office. I had done a program for them, and this couple comes in and wanders down the hall, and I am just serendipitously here. Here's their story. They are married. They're both over age 70 and a half. They both have IRAs. They do not need their minimum required distributions. They have farms. They have 3 daughters. They have already formed a limited liability company, and annually they're gifting their shares in the LLC to their 3 daughters. By the way, that means carryover basis, warning, warning, but that's another whole story about that. I should think about that. Is that true with an LLC? I should really withdraw that comment. Anyway, and they are interested in health planning. She says to me, they're sitting there in the office, just me without the fundraiser for the Community Foundation. They say, all of a sudden earlier in this year, she'd gone into a coma for like 4 months. No way to explain it, scared them witless. She came out of it, and now they are very serious about planning for their future and their children. That's how the LLC came about. I will tell you, I often call that a triggering event. And I do a lot of continuing education. I was just in beautiful Greenfield, Indiana, Hancock County, doing a CE program in the morning for advisors. And I said to them, your clients don't come in and say, gee, I'm thinking of doing this and such with my portfolio of assets. They sell it and then come in and say to their advisor, how do I hide the gain? So they aren't planning either. So there's often a triggering event. That's why don't wait till someone strolls on in and says this and such. If you're a storyteller and you can remember any of these stories, you have someone in the field of how this might apply, think of sharing that, because I will tell you, with storytelling, Aesop knew it, the Bible knew it, Shakespeare knew it. Storytelling wins out, and it's a great way to share what we know and can apply about charitable gift planning. So the health share, all of a sudden they're thinking about this. Now, I bet some of you in the room attending are saying right away, oh, 70 and a half with Iris. I am confident some of you saw that. Jen, why don't you go to the next? Because let's see what the solution is. They did not need the money from their IRAs. Did you notice that from the fact situation before? So they wanted to, they're sitting in the Community Foundation office. There's no quid pro quo. You don't have to make a gift to that charity in anticipation of this, because the 100,000, the IRA charitable rollover had just been passed. It was brand new, hot off the presses. And for those of us with tenure in this profession, you may remember that it passed under the administration of, wait for it, George W. Bush. 2 years, terminated, renewed, now is permanent. So nobody, it was brand new, off the presses. It might have been shut down. We all knew that. Time is of the essence many times in charitable gift planning. So she ends up doing 100,000 charitable IRA charitable rollover from her IRA in the first year. They funded a scholarship at a girls' private religious school in some faraway state. It wasn't Kokomo, Indiana. Drat it all to bits. But they were so impressed with this that the very next year they did the same thing from the husband's IRA. Remember, that can be up to $100,000 from an IRA, both the husbands and wife. They could have done it the same year. They wanted to straddle the tax years. Fine. That's been indexed for inflation. I think it's 105,000. I think next year will be 108,000. Always talk about that with the IRA charitable rollover, my friends, because everybody says, gee, it works for the required minimum distribution. True. If it is done directly from the IRA plan custodian to the public charity. The devil's in the details, says this former IRS estate and gift tax planning agent. examiner. It is in the details, so it must come from the plan administrator itself to count for the RMD and to have this happen. And you're going to say, I know you're thinking for the last like 70 and a half, did that change? Is the new withdrawal age 73? This is so true. But for this gift technique, it stayed at 70 and a half. And I will tell you, I live in the Hoosier heartland, and I was up in northern Indiana meeting with a symphony board who had done they had met their campaign goal. But guess what? They had 50 to 100 of their neighbors in that lovely town who hadn't stepped up, and they were not going to let them all go. So they called me in. We did some planning and so on and so forth. And the public charity, we talked about this over and over and over at that meeting, because this is immediately spendable to that symphony, which, if you all know, when times get tough, arts and culture go first. Absolutely go first. So if you want to protect it, do that. So they did that and put that in their arsenal to go after those 50 to 100 people who hadn't jumped into the campaign for the symphony. All right. So that was a great one. They were so pleased. And I will tell you something about this. You know what a fan I am of open-ended questions, and you should be too. People love to talk about their family situations. They love to talk about their kids. They love to talk about themselves, all those things. And when they were doing the LLC gifts to the three daughters, one of the open-ended questions I asked them is that working for your daughters? Because that cannot be convertible right now into spendable dollars. How is that working for them? Because under that annual gifting amount, you could also include some outright dollars, depending. And they looked at each other. Now, with three young women who are daughters, you can kind of guess one might have some financial situation. I have two sisters. My sister in Pennsylvania has always lived hand to mouth, and so do her children. So that's always been an issue. Things are not always familially equal in any family. So I'm glad I said that. It's not my problem. I'm the fundraiser. But I will tell you, as a matter of just good manners and how we in the Midwest feel about who we really care about, our family, in showing interest in them. A lot of times with a charitable gift annuity, if it's a single person, I'll say, is there somebody else of the same generation you want to include? A brother-in-law, a sister-in-law, a sibling, somebody you want to include, because if it's the same generation, that's just good ethical practice. And let's not forget, charitable gift annuities are highly repeatable. All right, I think we've talked about this one, Jen. I think we can go on. All right, here's case number 2. This came about through Thompson and Associates, also a community foundation up in northern Indiana. And this story, this woman just knocked my socks off. That's all I can say. She was serving on the board of the community foundation. Here's her story. Her husband was named John. He had a big old health scare. The whole community was just terrified they would lose him. He was so important to this and that and everything. He turned the corner, seeming to improve. He dies. All right, this is 2 years ago. We can now talk about it because she's already been on a cruise out of the country earlier in the year, and it's 2 years ago. And why is that important? They say anybody who loses a spouse should do nothing for a year. All we can do is be empathetic, sit in the wings, reinforce the love of charity for the person who's passed or the person who survived. That's about all we wrote. Nobody should do anything within a year. They're in shock, even if they do not know it. All right, her story, she has 2 adult sons. They are married. They are in their 40s. They are not likely to have children. They have very good careers. And, they live, I don't know if they either live locally, who really cares? Okay, her portfolio, because in Thompson Associates, we actually saw a portfolio. What do you know? She has $1 million in non-IRA retirement plan assets. But they are retirement plan assets. And right now, it's 50% to each of the sons through beneficiary designations. Be aware, my friends, that retirement plans and life insurance do not pass as per a will or trust. What does the contract say the day you went in and got your job at XYZ charity? It's a contract. You have to change your beneficiary designation. That's how those assets pass. And my good advice to any of you in the audience, if you are divorced or you have family members who are divorced, when this is over, pick up the phone and call them. Did they take that X off their beneficiary designation? Because if they did not, they get it. They get it. It becomes an irrevocable beneficiary contractual obligation if the plan owner dies with the X still named. Warning, warning, warning. Okay, just saying. So she's already given 50% of the two, and she has $2 million in other estate assets. Okay, so what are we going to say to this lady? Oh, and she's in her early 70s, mid 70s, something like that. Well, I often, again, family first, I often say to a woman like this, your will should always say the same thing. When I die, I leave everything. And for those of us who are lucky enough to have a spouse right there in the next room who helped with these slides, couldn't live, our essential worker in our family. Okay, if for us with a very important spouse, we say on our primary beneficiary 100% to my dear husband, Jeff Davidson. And don't say my spouse, those change. Who is your spouse? By name, who are they? So 100% to them. And then the contingent often has 50%. Here's what she's done to my son, so and so, and my son, so and so. Okay. I asked her right away, do the spouses get those retirement plans after your sons? And she looked at me frankly and said, only if they're still married to my sons at the time of my death. I said, always in your control. You can put 50% to my son, Sam, or his wife, Molly, if he predeceases me. And you could put that for the other one, whoever the wife is. And I says, if they divorced, you just change that contract and drop her. No problem, within your control. Good practical advice. Okay, she has $2 million in other assets. She's very charitable. She's been on the board of the community foundation. She's talked about things in the community that she's done. I was just at a funeral for a law school friend, sat by another law school friend. She says, my husband, Brian, he does everything in town. And our church has done a campaign, and there's not a week we don't go by that there's not an event or an offering. We are in it to win it. And this is just in a long series of XYZ. So her husband is exactly like my father, late father. He changed every community he ever lived in. I know this person. All right, Jen. So what do we suggest to her? All right. And I didn't give you the whole, so I suggested to her, hey, you might want to do a testamentary charitable remainder unit trust for each son and their spouse for the $1 million of retirement plan assets. Well, how would that work? All right. We've talked about how the beneficiary designation controls. So what she would do is go to her beneficiary designation, and instead of 50% to son and 50% to other son and spouse, no. She says 100% to the trustee of the charitable remainder unit trust created in my last will and testament. That makes it tax exempt. Usually retirement plan assets are taxed. That's what I said to him. Those will be taxed to your children to inherit. Those will be taxed because they have income tax deferred, both state and federal. And I think there's a little ACA tax on it, maybe others that get taxed. So I suggested that. And I said, then step two, you put all the terms of the charitable remainder trust inside your will. When I die and my retirement plan assets are received, here's the terms of the trust. Sons, 5%, spouses, blah, 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 all in there. Nothing happens during life, sits there waiting, fallow, waiting to be done. That's great advice. I said, the 2 million, you can give it to them outright. No tax. Are they good with money? Oh yeah, they're great with money. Super. You could give it to them. That's super. Okay. I hope the next slide, Jen, tells us what she came back the next month and told me she did. Oh, go back one more slide. I need to change this because she comes back month 2 because Thompson meets once a month. And she says to me, no kidding. This is one of those things when if you tell people there's a problem, you don't know which way they'll go down the road not taken. But she said, I was so upset that you told me about the taxation on those retirement plan assets. Forget my sons. I went right to my beneficiary designation and I have put percentages. You know, it's never a dollar amount, it's percentages so we can rock and roll with market activity and your use of the fund. I I put 100% into a chair remainder unit trust for the benefit. She said I put 100% in different various percentages to different charities, 30% to the community foundation, 20% to the hospital, blah, 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 added up to 100%. And I was just aghast. I said, you can do this trust, and then the boys have the use of it, and it won't cost you anything except managing the trust for the boys after you're gone, and putting that documentation in your will or trust so it knows whatever. She said, no, 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 I'm convinced. I said, but I thought you loved it. She said, oh, I do. I loved it so much that the other 2 million that I have, I'm going to put that in the charitable remainder trust for the benefit of my sons. I said, you mean you're giving them nothing outright in your estate? She said, exactly right. She said, I love that idea. I love the fact that they would get income. They have good careers. I can put the wives on. And if they divorce my beloved sons, heck with them. I'll kick them off because I'll be in control. It'll be in the will waiting to be activated. That's it. So the moral of the story is that estate went from 0 charitable plans to $3 million. 1 million from the retirement plan that's going outright to various charities at the donor's death. And number 2, the 2 million that the 2 sons are perfectly capable of handling, that she's no longer giving to them outright, but she's putting into a charitable remainder trust. And ethically, my friends, I said to her, if you do that trust, have your practitioner call me so I can tell them about the revenue rulings that will save you a lot of time, money as they draft them. And I'll also tell them about ethical provisions, including your retaining the power to change what charities can get the remainder beneficiaries. And if you want your sons to have that power after you're gone, lots of ethical conversations. So I need to change the slide. I apologize because advice not taken and went from 0 estate to 3 million. Pretty darn swell story. Way to go. All right, next one. Let's look at the next one. All right, case number 3. Got to look at the time. Oh, we're doing great. All right, case number 3. What are the facts here? Because we actually have 5 in here. It's the super bonus special, the Black Friday special before it happens. Okay, case number 3. This is somebody from my town. I just love him so much. We have the best opera school in the country. I went to a world premiere last Friday. I have to go see it again on Thursday. It was so amazing. And the last time I ever saw this donor was at the opera. So I will look down and see him in that seat tomorrow. All right, what's the story? This is a single guy. He has no children, never been married. His retirement asset was a major asset, which I did not know for a long time, which I did not know. Who did he love? His sister and his partner. The same generation. They could not marry then. Remember? Could not marry. This is Dick. You've heard, if I've come to your town, spoken to your plan giving council or your charity, you've heard me talk about Dick. Because Dick was the money manager of the family. No question, everyone relied on Dick. Now, what did he do first before I ever met Dick? How I met him when I worked in my former IU Foundation. He had put inside his will, when I die, I want my assets marshaled. I want a charitable remainder unit trust to be funded, paying 5%. It is always 5%. Don't even think about anything else. 5%. I want that 5% to be shared between my sister and my partner, same generation, for their lives. And when I'm gone, scholarships. Wonderful plan. Wonderful. I meet him. I don't remember how. I know his attorney. No idea how I met him, but we did. So he contacted me actually at age 69 and a half. And he says, next year, dang it. He said, I am so cross. The IRS is going to force me to take a retirement plan distribution. I don't need it, but I might. Well, in the Midwest, if we have any motto we cling to, it would be a rainy day, it is a coming. Doesn't look like it today in the sun and the jungle that is behind me that is called my Macheteville. My late dad called my house my Macheteville. I love it so much. Anyway, so Dick calls me because we are best of friends. And I will tell you, um, I say to every audience I ever present to, and every donor I meet, every prospect, if you have any questions about this, I hope you call me because all we want is an informed donor that makes good, educated choices that move things along. That's all we strive for. And I don't care if it's your question is for our charity or not. Welcome, welcome, welcome. A rising tide lifts all boats. And I have done that for years, and not enough people call me. I wish far more were, because so many times the smallest thing is an impediment. Because look at this right here. Somebody says, Dick says to me, next year I have to take that RMD. I don't need it, but I might. And a lot of people I know would say, well, you just have to take it anyway. Might as well just give it to us. Da, da, da. I can just hear as if what he said did not matter. You know, we're all charitable gift annuities. People outlive all life expectancy known to humankind. And people are worried about diversified sources of income. I am the banker's daughter, the banker's wife. A planned gift can be, maybe should be part of a diversified portfolio. And I talk about it in that way. And that resonates because economic legs is what we're all looking for. We're going to live a long time. Hopefully, Jeff and me right over there. Okay, so Dick says this to me. So what am I going to suggest to him? Okay, let's go to the next slide, Jen. All right. We know there's a testamentary charitable trust to pay 5% for life to his sister and his partner. He already did that with a very fine local attorney long before I got into the picture. All right. I said to him, Dick, we could do that charitable trust. We could pull it out. We could fund it during lifetime. You could be the first beneficiary. He said what so many donors have said. Gee, that sounds complex. What else have you got? I'm telling you, in my state, finding a trustee is a nightmare. Who's going to be a trustee that won't sell the book of business? I mean, Colonel Eli Lilly's estate was in court a number of years ago because his trust had been sold many times and the charity's no longer getting distribution like it should. So people are worried about that. So trustee, he said, gee, that sounds complex. What else have you got? Well, my children went to Montessori, all hail Montessori, where choose what you will, but consequences flow. Charitable gift annuities are irrevocable. So I go see Dick, I take 9 calculations. For those of you who do gift annuities all the time, please, 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 please stop saying to that couple, what are your dates of birth? We'll run the numbers. We'll run the contract. We'll bring it on over. No, no, no. I've told this story a zillion times. Lewis, the donor who comes in with 25,000 to endow his annual journalism scholarship. And he says, I need the income. I'm not wealthy. And I say, what's your date of birth? And I say to Lewis, 7.3%. He says, wowee, I have it in a CD in Cleveland paying 2%. He says, when the market tanks, what a perceptive man. When the market tanks, what will bear the loss on this? Because I don't want the scholarship fund to have no dollars in it. I want students to ask for it by name. I got up on my chair and said, you're a better fundraiser than me. So he took 6%. He said, I tripled my income from this 2% CD. I got a slightly better income tax deduction, one time only, who really cares? But more importantly, now I know the fund won't be stripped out when the market tanks. So I took 9 calculations to Dick because I'd already had this situation with Lewis. I learned. And I showed also, I showed the maximum distribution, which I call the CGA. It's not the suggested or recommended. Quash that. It's the maximum. I showed him that, but I showed deferrals, less rate, different things, so on and so forth. He ends up looking at 9 calculations, picks 4-year deferral, takes it out next year, has to do 2 contracts. Why? The first contract says, I Dick the donor in 4 years get income, and only if I kick does my sister get it. And contract 2 says, I Dick the donor in 4 years get income, and my partner Jim gets it only if I kick. All right. Dick's always the first donor, always the first donor. He comes in the next year. He says, loved it, loved it, loved it. Should have deferred long enough. 6 years. You educate your donors. Remember, charitable gift annuities are the most repeatable gift type in America. Educate your donors and do a better book of business for your charity and give them choices on rates. Give them, it's not always about how much can I get, because when you look at the 9 calculations, the income hardly falters. It hardly falters when you take 6 versus 7.3, hardly. Okay, I go down to, he loves it. Every year is a new deal. And Dick is so dang smart. You know, actuarially, if you're within 6 months of your next birthday, you achieved it. I knew the year, the day, every year he was coming in to do his deferred gift annuity. It was the day after 6 months before his next birthday. Shrewd to the hills, Mr. Dick was. All right, we're sitting in his condo that he had then in Naples, sipping our beverages, our adult beverages. And he said something about his Sears retirement plan. I said, Dick, is that your largest portfolio item? Yes, it is. I said, Dick, you're a single guy, no spouse, living in Indiana. Kiss that baby goodbye. Because then in the state of Indiana, I do not kid you, possibility of 8 taxes for a single person dying with a retirement plan. 8. That's no longer true. Olden days, the world is constantly changing. Olden days, the color drains from his face. Simple fix. That by the time he comes back to town, I've already talked with his attorney, changes the beneficiary designation of the Sears retirement plan. It doesn't say 50% sister, 50% Jim. It doesn't say to my estate. No, it says to the trustee of the charitable remainder trust created in my last will and testament, tax exempt. And I have to change this as well. I need to update this handout. I'm going to, because I like this. He actually did gift number 5. When I saw him at the opera and rushed down to kiss all over him, on Monday I called the person then in the chair at my former charity. And I said, are you cozy with Dick? Yes, I am. I said, he'll do a retained life estate on that beautiful home he has in Bloomington because Jim has died. He will do it. And he did. Think how much bigger his scholarship fund was for every single year. He says, I'm forced to take RMD. Do I have choices? I want to make sure I've provided for the 2 that, and he outlived the sister and Jim. He outlived them all. How do I take care of the people I love? I can do this. What do I do about my real estate? And let me say something about that retained life estate. Even Jen, if we can't go to case number 5, and we might skip number 4 if we have to, because 5, no, we have time to do it. Let me say something about a retained life estate. My father was a banker, and in Indiana, he said Hoosiers hold on to a dollar till it screams for mercy. We should be promoting the heck out of retained life estate or term of years for personal residence, vacation home, or farm. Promote the heck out of it. I'll tell you why. Not only is it a whopper income tax deduction, because you would never do this until it's actuarially sweet in your late 70s, early 80s. I worked at early voting. One of my co-workers, an 83 and an 84-year-old friend, moved to town, giving their whole estate to the university. I said right away, do they have kids? No. Do they have a house? Yes. I wrote down it. Retain life estate. They're 83 and 84. Big income tax deduction. And here's where my banker's dad words come to haunt. It means the estate closes quicker. What holds up an estate? Real estate. Then you don't pay taxes, shovel snow, replace the roof when the tornado comes through in Indiana, shovel the leaves. The neighbors hate you, mowing the lawn. You save all those expenses. The kids get their distribution sooner. Double win. So promote the expediency of it's good for your kids. If this is your intention for that personal residence, vacation home, or farm, do it now. Here's why, and why your kids can benefit. They're running off the shelf here in Southern Indiana with land trusts. No one's going to take my 100 acres of land in beautiful Brown County, Indiana. They're doing those like crazy to protect land from future development. So keep that in your back of your mind. And ethically, my friends, I don't care if you work for the Cancer Society, the hospital, or the public library. If somebody says, oh, I'd really like this land to be held, you can say they're a land trust, there's the Nature Conservancy, and you ought to talk to them about that. If the donor drives no matter how good and worthy your cause is. So Dick is the most model donor ever, ever, ever. His scholarship fund, so much greater funding because every decision on an annual basis was, can I use a charitable plan to offset income and management decisions I'm also considering. Love it. All right, Jen, let's go to the next one. All right. This is, oh, I love it. This is Jack. Sorry, you've heard about this as well. Jack uh, comes in and he walks down the hall. Never met him before. Never met him before. He sits down and says to me, I am giving the university $200,000. This is decades ago. Real money. Now, a lot of you would say, that's incredible. We thank you. We'll acknowledge you. How do you want us to acknowledge you? We'll invite you to everything till kingdom come. Da, 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 da. Okay, what do you want it used for? We would all do that. Here's what I said to him, Jack, I've never met you before. My job is to make sure this is the smartest gift for you. I tell you, write that down. My job is to make sure this is the smartest gift for you. I don't care who writes your paycheck. The donor makes or breaks your reputation all over, and you should treat it in just that way. So I said, I've never met you. Are you thinking of selling or disposing of any asset in the next few years? Okay. He says, funny you should say that. Here's number 3. I have a portfolio of appreciated rental properties. They've been well maintained and marketable. And my wife said to me last year, get out of the landlord business. I'm sick of being tied. I said right away, Jack, in this office, the marital mandate always rises to the top. And you should feel the same. I don't care. I never met the wife, never met her. And she drove this. That was the triggering event. The wife said, get out of the landlord business. So I said, tell me about your family situation. Well, my daughter made more money in the first year of her career than I made my entire military life. She's married to a neurologist. The leading, it actually was a thoracic heart surgeon. She was married to the leading thoracic heart surgeon on the Eastern Seaboard. They have no children and they engage in extreme sports. I fully extend, my wife and I think they'll die falling down a mountain before us. Okay. And why did we get into that much detail? Because of course he says, should I involve my daughter in these charitable plans in some way? Because his wife said, honey, it's our largest portfolio asset. Maybe we ought to include the daughter. Should we do that? So we had to think out loud. That's what ethics are. We think out loud. Will that daughter need those resources? No. Actually said, sounds like she has her own estate tax issues, Jack. It just sounds that way to me, Jack. What do you think? So here's what it is. So he has a highly appreciated portfolio, a wife who says gets out of it, and the husband has done nothing. He said, I listed it with a company. I've done nothing because I'm afeared of capital gains. Of course he is. When I worked in charitable gift planning early in my career, I mean, when capital gains were 28%, we were just doing gifts of appreciated assets and real estate hand over fist. Talk about a triggering event, that'd be one. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Jen, and see what we suggested. Okay. I said to him, hey, do you know is there any debt on the property? Because you can't put a indebted property into a charitable remainder trust. You can't into a gift annuity, but you cannot into a charitable remainder trust. I said, hey, no debt. I said, you could look at your portfolio, pick the highest appreciated rental property that you want to unload first, and you can deed that property. Jack, you can deed that property. Jack and Dora deeded the property to IU Foundation, the trustee of the charitable remainder unit trust. And there's the charitable remainder unit trust, the 5%, blah, 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 blah. It's all right there. Now, when he does that, he transfers that highly appreciated property to the charitable remainder trust. He recognizes no capital gains tax upon the funding. Now, the accountants in the room are saying, but he does, yeah, every year incrementally in the character of the income, there's some capital gains. Boy, that's a lot better than losing 30% on the front end and investing 70% to pay some incrementally over time, far better outcome. So he pays no capital gains tax, and the trust is funded with the full fair market value of the unit. Hooray. He and his wife are 71. We run the numbers. Eventually, two 71-year-olds enjoying a 5% charitable major unit trust will pass on, and there is an actuarial income tax deduction available. And it ended up being 55% of the value of the unit. Oh boy. So he gets a letter. You get to deduct this amount as an income tax deduction, actuarial from this trust with these terms. Hooray. All right. And so what happens? So are you foundation? Hey, most of you should never be trustee. Never, 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 never. But certain are, and they had a lot of former bankers good at it. So they're the trustee. They say to Jack, hey, what company in DC do you want us to lift? Real estate company do you want us to list it with? He tells us. It sells. There's an offer in 2 weeks. Jack calls us. We said, do you like the offer? Love the offer. We take it. IU Foundation does long distance sale. They no longer own a unit, rental unit, DC now. They own cash, hard cold cash. They run over, fund the portfolio. Jack and Dora now have a charitable major trust with money in it. All right. Jack comes back to campus year 2, skips down the hall. No, he skips. He sits down and he says right away, oh, that actuarial income tax deduction, I kept all my military retirement pay last year from that. If we do not think income tax deductions matter, you're crazy. It is the driver of the train. I don't even talk about estate and gift tax benefits anymore. Why bother? How lucky you are to have a problem. That's what I always say. How lucky you are to have a problem. Let's talk about the 99.5% of us who will never have a taxable estate. Okay, so he does that. He skips down actuary, and he says, and you know what, Pam? The reason the units were so appreciated, I put all the rental income back into the units. We never had it. My wife loves getting a check from the trustee. He's cultivating himself for gift too. I said, you could do it again. Does it again? Year 3, he does it because then he has 5-year carryover and deduction. He's a Hoosier. He wants to make sure he fully uses it. Year 3, he does another one so he can fully use the carryover. Year 5, he does transfer number 3. And he comes in every year, every time he funds 3 different times, new actuarial income tax deduction added to the trust at FMV. The wife is happy, less fuss, more portfolio income, blah, blah, blah. He comes back year 5. Now we're old friends. He strolls down the hall. He says, well, you know, when I first met you, Pam, and I said I was giving IU 200,000, my new number is $1 million because you showed me how. I said to him, well, gosh, Jack, now you get to divide up $1 million here. What are you going to do? He did 100,000 endowed scholarship for a ROTC student, the only one I ever saw. And then he burst into tears and said, I met my wife in the marching band. Best people ever. $100,000 endowed scholarship for a marching 100 band student. That'll never be on your database, and it wasn't on his. He burst into tears when I said, now you get to divide up $1 million. So I say to you, my fellow fundraisers, is it easier to find 5 donors at 200,000 or 1 donor who does 3 different additions to a trust, which adds up to $1 million? And it absolutely ethically suits everything they said they wanted to accomplish, everything, because it minimizes asset management diversification, which we undervalue. Let me say a minute or two about the 5%. Why is it the 5%? You're like, oh, why is it the 5%? 3 reasons. Got a 3 for on this one. 3. Number 1, 5% is the lowest payout the IRS stipulated in 1971 when it said charitable major trusts are okay. It means when you fund, when Jack put that unit in and took 5%, the lowest payout for him he got the highest actuarial income tax deduction, correct? Number 2, what happens to the year 1 of that trust? It earned 8%. What happens? Well, Jack and Dora got 5%. The trustee pocketed 1, 2% gets reinvested back into the trust. That plus market activity, every year the trust is revalued, 5% is applied against the new number. So number 2, 5% means I have the greatest chance of growth and the greatest protection of inflation ever. And here's number 3, the Lewis tail. 5% means that when the market tanks, I have the greatest chance of the trust surviving. When the market tanked last time, people all over the country with 6, 7, and 8% trust terminated them because the trust says if you can't earn the 8%, you got to go back to corpus. They could see the principal coming down, no gift whatsoever to the charity. So 5%, greatest growth, greatest survivability, and greatest deduction on the front end. Three for. That's the Jack, happiest guy ever. Think about Jack. All right, number 5, we're gonna make it, Jen. I'm feeling so good about it. All right, this one I love. This is also a Hoosier Farm. And who's the hero of this story? The park superintendent. You know, I am all about education and awareness. I am trying to shake the tree of my own local community foundation to say education and awareness counts. When I just went to Greenfield, Indiana, I did that CE program in the morning for advisors, but I said to that executive director, let's have a session in the middle in the afternoon for local donors and prospects. We had a good crowd. 4 individuals and or couples stayed afterwards to talk to me. 4. And one of them said, everything you talked about exactly addresses what we are thinking about and worried about and being concerned about right now. And what did I say to all of them? You are free to call me to discuss any of this. In fact, I will do for free an appointment where you go see your advisor. You put me on speakerphone, you all call me, we talk about options, soup to nuts, you hang up on me, and you and the advisor decide what to do. That is that moves the ball along like nothing. That's what this case is about. I went into another Indiana county, did a program, and the hero of the story, the park superintendent, calls. And here's the story he tells me. This is the county, Hendricks County, where the Indianapolis International Airport is. And by the way, let's do a push right now. Next year's National Association of Charitable Gift Planners Conference is in downtown Indianapolis. It will sell out. It's a quick 15-minute Uber ride from the airport. Downtown is terrific. Call me, ask me. I'm all about culture, and I can help you out on that. So anyway, Hendricks County is where the airport is. And the parks had run an article in a little county paper. Gosh, we'd like to have a county park before our county's all sold up, snatched up. And this farm family comes forward and says, will our farm do? Yes, it will. It's a 159-acre farm. They have already partitioned the farm before I got there. 139 acres they plan to sell to the Parks Foundation for 1.9 million. And mom and dad are going to live in the 20 acres on the side with the farm buildings. Okay, they have written nothing down. Why? What interest rate can the county afford to pay over 10 years when elected officials might change that's affordable for the county? It's an interest rate that will really work. So they're paralyzed, inertia. What are the terms going to be? That's why they've done nothing. So the attorney and accountant, I will tell you, had never worked on a charitable plan. It was deer in the headlights from the very first second. The accountant attended the very first meeting. The attorney came in second. And here's what happens. I go in and see this couple because I don't remember if the rest of actual facts are on the second page, but I'll just tell you what they are because I remember them. They're in their early 80s. All right. And she works for the county and he has farmed this little farm. I asked them because they're talking about the property right next to them. You know, my grandparents were farmers, and I don't care whose name swings on that gate, it'll always be their farm. I said to them, here's my open-ended question. Are you thinking of naming anything at the park? Now, doesn't that make total sense? She says right away, well, we'd like to name a shelter house. And I said, why in the world would you sell this farm for 1.9 million, pay capital gains, state and federal, then write a check to the Parks Foundation for the charitable gift you've already told me you want to make? So I said, you own an undivided fractional interest in that 139 acres, and there's no debt on it, right? Absolutely true. I said, so you have options. You have options. So let's go to the next slide, Jen. And I'll tell you what we did. I suggested this right off the bat, and here's how it fell out. I said, I said, you can You own 100% undivided fractional interest in that farm. Okay, let's do a series of deeds. Number one, they did, mom and dad, they deeded 2% undivided fractional interest in 139 acres in Hendricks County, Indiana, to the Parks Foundation. I said, yippee skippy. Now you've made the outright pre-tax charitable gift you told me about. I said, now you don't get 2% of the money, but you get to deduct 2% of the value, and you don't pay capital gains on 2% because you gave it to charity. Hooray. I looked at them and I said, is income important to you? Don't just say income must matter. Is income important to you? And then be quiet before they answer. They said, yes, yes, it is. And I, okay, deed number two, mom and dad deeded 15% of the undivided fractional interest in their 139 acres in Hendricks County, Indiana, to the local community foundation in exchange for a 6% gift annuity for life for mom and dad. I said, what's so great about this is that when the first of you go, the survivor gets the whole 6%. Unlike Social Security, no reduction in payment. And I said, that 15%, you gave it to a charity, no capital gains on that. And I said, and you get an actuarial income tax deduction because eventually two people your ages will pass on. Their actuarial income tax deduction was 60% of the farm value. Now they have 6% fixed for life. Hooray. I said, do you have children? 5. I said, okay. Do they need income? Desperately. Deed number 3, they deeded 30% of the undivided fractional interest in their 139 acres in Hendricks County, Indiana, to the trustee of a charitable major trust, paying 5% for 20 years to their 5 named children. Mom leans over and says to me, when my parents died, I inherited quite a bit of farmland. How that would have helped us when we were raising our 5 children on that farm. Our farm income was $15,000 a year. And that's why I worked in county government and father drove school buses. That's it. You know, I get asked all the time, when should you help your children? When they need it. She was she went through cancer remission and cancer and then good health during all this because she had a lot to live for to see this done. Now I will, and then they sold the 53%. Oh, by the way, the 20%, 30% to the charitable major trust, no capital gains, went to a charitable major trust. All right, they sold 53% to the Parks Foundation. 47% was free of capital gains, plus the income tax deductions offset gains and income taxes. Plus, there was income for a term of years to the kids under the trust and to the spouse under the gift annuity. All right, here's the ethical part of that story. Now I have a few minutes that I can say that. The attorney was so frightened about this. It's irrevocable, 1.9. Oh, Lord, it's so unfamiliar. Called him in on November. Why are we doing this? Why do I say November? It's November right now. My friends at IU Foundation, my gosh, we straddled the tax year like fiends. We had people create a trust at the end of the tax year and make an addition to it in January, or we put 50% of a undivided fractional interest from property into something in December, the other in January. So we got an extra year carryover deduction. Do you have people that straddling the tax year is an attractive option? It sure was for us. So I called John, the attorney, in November. Why aren't we moving? He said, well, I'm going to do the 53% land contract sale because I'm familiar with that. And we'll do the charitable pieces next year. And I said, au contraire, my friend. Palmer Conundrum is a prearranged deal. Oh, no, no. You have to sell what's left. You have to do the charitable pieces first. Oh, he was stressed, but we got it done. All right, let me say part 2. The county said, my goodness, this sounds complex. They had me drive back up, sit down. Here's a big meeting. The Parks Foundation, the Community Foundation Board, the county attorney, the accountant and attorney for the couple, the park superintendent. My gosh, they were all there. They say, explain the story. I go through the whole thing. The county attorney gets up at the end and says, Pam, when we acquire property for county government, we get 100% at one time. You're asking us to acquire this in 4 pieces, and we're going to have to time it out in terms of how we can make money, how we can afford it. The first piece to be funded here, the charitable major trust, because 20-year clock for the kids is running. That was the first one to be funded. But we had a timeline for that too. He said, "You're asking us to make this much more complex." He said, "But gosh, there's a lot of advantage to this. We're going to do it." Because if you look at this example, both the 20-year charitable remainder trust and the gift annuity, both those, and the Parks Foundation, all of that stayed within the county, those monies. The 53% they had to outlay, they were willing to do it anyway. So they really had to pay all the pieces to different entities, but it worked. It can be done. All right, we have just a few minutes. I see that. It's all about application, my friends. Jen, good to see you again. And listening to what the donor says to you. It is all driven by who they really love the most, themselves and their families. You notice every one of these scenarios puts family at the top of the pecking order, and it should. I say to many donors, you should never do a charitable gift plan unless it works for who you really care about, yourselves and your family. So keep that in mind as you approach this. Ask open-ended questions, be a listener, be creative with ideas. Know that Stelter, yay, Stelter for doing this, is available to help you at all times. There's lots of us who are colleagues that will take your hand, I among them, and say, have you considered XYZ? And remember that simple carries the day. Simple, repeatable, donor-centric, using the right asset. All right, Jen, with that, I'll turn it over to you. And thank you so much for letting my mouth fly for this period of time.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, we really don't have any time for the questions. I'm just going to sneak this one in here because it's on this very last case study. They're asking of the 47% here who purchased that that the Parks Foundation didn't purchase, this 47%.
The Parks Foundation had to outlay all the money, but they were not upset because 2%, 30, 20, 15%, and 20% will come back to stay in the community. That they were already ready to lay it on the line.
Okay.
Good question.
And just a clarification, is actuarial income tax deduction just another way of saying charitable income tax deduction?
It is, but with a life income plan, you have to say actuarially because it's otherwise it's outright. It's not. Jack didn't deduct the full fair market value as because he can't deduct the right of 271-year-olds to get 5% income for life. So if it's a life income plan, it's actuarially. Otherwise, it's outright or charitable. Be
Okay.
clear. Good
Um,
questions.
Catherine sent a couple in about the first and second scenarios, just talking about the taxes. And I think I'm just going to ask Catherine to reach out to you personally
Yes,
about those.
do that.
Um, so, right. But the rest of you we haven't gotten to your questions. Here is Pamela's email address, pjdavidson@giftplanners.com. You can also reach out to Nathan or myself if you have any other questions about Stelter, our products or our services, and you will get the recording and the PDF to the slides. I'll email that out to you tomorrow. It'll also be available on our webinars page in a couple days. So that's it. We just squeaked in. I think we're a minute over. So thank you so much, Pamela. I need a nap. You have more energy than anyone I know. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining us and for your talent. And helping our community today. So thank
We
you.
love
And
what we do, Jen.
that's right.
We're
And thanks everyone
privileged.
for joining us. And we'll see you next year. Take the post webinar survey. Tell us what you want to see next year. And we'll try to put that in the schedule. Okay. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.